The recording and broadcasting of the executive will start in 5 seconds. So that is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the executive here in County Hall. Our quarterly outturn meeting this morning with one or two other items on the agenda. Can we do apologies for absence? Can I note apologies from Councillor Mark Crane, and then from Scrutiny Board, Councillor Brodigan, Councillor Gibbs, Councillor Hugill, Councillor Staveley. Have I captured everybody? Yeah. Okay. Are you happy that I signed the minutes of the last meeting? Seeing nods. Thank you. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Michael, please.
Thank you, Leader. Can I declare an interest in item 5, the performance monitoring and budget report, specifically the Treasury Management papers? My employer is mentioned in the papers. I rely on a dispensation that's been given by the Standards Committee to stay in the meeting and vote.
Thank you, Michael. Gareth.
My usual one then. Usual reference to second terms council tax, if indeed it is referenced within the reports. I do rely on the dispensation from the Standards Committee.
Thank you, Gareth. Anybody else, please? No, in that case, let's move on to item 4, public questions and statements. I understand that there are none. So that takes us straight into the substantive item of item 5, Q2 performance monitoring and budget report. We'll do it in our usual format. Heather will provide us with an executive summary shortly. Then we'll do it section by section, where I will come to members of the executive first to see if they have anything that they want to add, and then I'll come to you, Karen, from the Scrutiny Board side, and you may have some questions which you want to put to us section by section. I understand that there's been a number of questions submitted by Councillor Staveley, who can't be here with us this morning, and those are going to be answered by executive members and directors outside of this meeting. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you, Karen. So with that, Heather, can I come to you, please, for the executive summary?
Thank you, Leader. As in previous quarter, the main report includes an executive summary, which highlights the areas that are going well and those that need to be addressed. It then follows the themes from the council plan: 5 thriving places and empowered communities, sustainable and connected places, safe, healthy and living well, maximise the potential in one council. The report also includes 2 appendices regarding the KPIs. This is an addition of an extra visual to show the direction of travel of indicators from previous year, and also the Housing Landlord Services Performance Supplement. The Landlord Service continues its ongoing development with monthly reporting in place to support its work with the regulator for social housing. Given the scope and scale of this work, a supplementary Landlord Services Performance Report has been created as an additional resource to clearly highlight progress made in this area, as well as any challenges the service may be facing. There are a number of things which do appear to be going well. One council, we've got telephone call answering times have been improving significantly, and is well below our target that was set at the beginning of the process. There's tourism and culture seems to be performing particularly strongly at the moment, and even the highways customer service requests appear to be improving there. I'm not sure quite why. Maybe Councillor Taylor has a view on that, but that seems to be going well. Obviously, well-being and living well are very important for North Yorkshire, and we seem to be seeing improvements in referrals to children's social care. Placement instability seems to be improving. Early help and reablement impact are ensuring that early intervention are able to improve outcomes for people. This is also very important when we're talking about the HCPs as well, and that seems to be on the right direction as well. But as has said before, there are things we do need to address, and benefits processing times are having a bit of a blip at the moment, but we have accumulated quite a lot of backlog during the system convergence downtime. But there are a number of people who are dedicated to ensuring that this is reduced as soon as possible, because that will impact some of the most vulnerable people in North Yorkshire. Homelessness is also some concern, but it will be when we're able to provide more of our own accommodation and not rely on outside sources, that will improve. And I know there's been concern regarding the disabled facilities grants, but I think that's now being addressed effectively. Bins and waste are still bedding in with new working systems, so that will be addressed as well. So our most important people in this county are basically children and older people, and we do still have quite a number of problems, but there is a lot of work that's gone in to try and make this improve. So the assessments and such like have gone down, but we are obviously addressing that, and we're using a few more short stay care home beds, but I'm afraid that's something that's we're not going to meet our long-term targets on that, but at least we are aware of it and we are trying to address it. Schools are suffering because of permanent exclusions are increasing, so there are quite a number from this last academic year, so we'll hopefully find some way of making that work better. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, so let's move into, excuse me, into this section by section. So we'll start with thriving. Any colleagues want to say anything on the thriving section? Simon, please.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Leader. Just really to emphasise two areas which were mentioned in full council, where we do have challenges, and one is in homelessness and prevention of we do a lot of work trying to prevent people from becoming homeless. We've noticed that people are presenting with much less time for us to take those steps. So we have to look at that. It hasn't led to an increase in temporary accommodation yet, but we're fearful of that, so we're going to address it. And then, as colleagues will remember, dealing with the backlog of disabled facilities grants, putting new resources into delivering on that. Obviously, one of the cuts we're making to council is batteries. And then just to emphasise some good news. The number of visitors to our cultural attractions and programmes and exhibitions is back up at over 80,000. Now we have the Pump Room Museum fully operational. One of the things that gives me great pleasure is the satisfaction ratings for those services, which are consistently above our own targets, and in some cases well in excess of 90%, which is a real testament to our team and the fact that we're doing something right. And then just to perhaps emphasise one other point. When I was in Scarborough last week at the launch of Scarborough Lights, which is part of Scarborough Fair, which is something delivered by and on behalf of North Yorkshire Council. One of the interesting statistics that came out of that, in terms of the benefit of some of what we do, is that every pound invested in the Scarborough Fair has a return of £37 in terms of social value. So if we could get that return on every pound we spent, we'd be doing very well indeed. So hats off to the team there and across the culture, tourism and library services.
Thank you, Simon. Any other colleague want to come in? If not, I'll come to you then, Karen, please.
Thank you. Yes, we've a couple of questions on thriving places and empowered communities. If I start with Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you. Library performance on page 28. The success of the Summer Reading Challenge is welcomed, and I know it was well received by a lot of families. Can we build upon this success by having events and campaigns throughout the year that draw people to their local library and engage them in reading? Can these events be linked in with or extended to the mobile library service so that rural families who cannot readily get to the main library in their nearest town can also benefit?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baker, because your question gives me an opportunity to highlight a couple of things. One is, yes, the take up of the Summer Reading Challenge was 6% up on last year, so it's a very encouraging trend, and increased footfall across. To tell you that next year is the National Year of Reading. So our libraries are planning a series of events and promotions to support this campaign. We'll be starting in January with a reading challenge aimed at adults. And there'll be events and activities throughout the year to promote reading for pleasure. And on your point with communities that cannot so easily access a fixed library, our new mobile library comes into service in January, and we will be using that to highlight the National Year of Reading. We're adding to our list of rural mobile stops by visiting up to 20 new communities. So a really marked improvement on the mobile library service that was previously offered. Very exciting times for the library service, and we'll be discussing it at our conference tomorrow.
Did you have another question on this, Karen?
Yes, please. Yes, Councillor Lee Andrew would like to contribute.
Thank you. Pages 31 and 32 of the report highlights the planning statistics, and in light of recent publicity and in terms of the amount of inquiries members receive with regards to planning, the Scrutiny Board feel, and we've asked it before, that the data as presented is not really giving a true reflection of the position. It all looks very good when the two components are combined, that is the applications within statutory time and extension time. What I had asked previously is for those things to be separated. The statutory time period for minor applications being 8 weeks and for major being 13 weeks. I think it would give a truer, a more accurate picture if we could see in actuality how many applications were determined in 8 and 13 weeks and how many, what percentage were determined after a request for an extension. If that could be perhaps presented in future reports, I think that would be most welcome. Thank you. Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. Nick, would you like to respond in as Mark is away?
We'll look into that. I think some of the challenges are how things are recorded in the system and whether we're able to pull that out, but we'll take that away and look at it. Just one of the key points I do want to make on extensions of time, though, are these agreed with the applicant, and quite often it's to do with information still to be submitted or missing, or comments not received potentially from statutory consultees. To go down quite a hardline route of sticking within the statutory time periods might mean increasing refusal rates or requests for withdrawal until those pieces of information can be supplied. So just want to really stress the point that extensions of time are not just the council allowing extension of time, it is an agreement with the applicant as well.
Thank you, Nick. And Heather, would you like to come in on this as well?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As Nick has said, sometimes it is to our mutual benefit to allow an extension on planning applications, because if there is insufficient time spent on the pre-app by the applicant, sometimes we do need to work together to address the deficits within the applications. So I don't think it's an unreasonable request to ask for the numbers, but I think you need to understand that we have a bit of soft power that we can use with developers, and we need to have that. And if we start measuring things too strictly, we're going to put off developers. So I think I'd use the figures with a bit of a pinch of salt, as it were. But I would say, yeah, I think that probably is something that we could manage. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Karen, can I come to you? Can we move on to sustainable, please? Any executive colleagues want to come in on sustainable? Can't see anybody indicating, so then Karen, can I come to you, please?
Okay, thank you. We just have one question on sustainable and connected places. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Karen. Page 35, municipal waste to landfill. What can be done to reduce the amount of time that the Allerton Waste Recovery Park is shut down for maintenance?
Thank you, Andrew. Richard, please.
Yeah, it was shut down last year, 44 days for repair. It's a case of, can we find somewhere else to put the waste in that period that isn't landfill? Unfortunately, other sites tend to be booked up at the moment, or there is more capacity coming into the north of England, which might make it possible for us to, when we're not operating, to move that waste elsewhere. But as it stands at the moment, we try to reduce the amount of days that are shut down. I think that's key, and keep the facility open and operating for as many days as possible.
Okay. We're having problems with these microphones, but Barry tells me that we've got a quote in for a replacement. Not before time then, Barry. The way they keep cutting off. Right, so any exec colleagues want to come in on safe, healthy and living well? Michael, please.
Thank you, Leader. There's two things I wanted to highlight. The first is on a positive note. You'll see from the report the positive impact the occupational therapy assistant role has had on the level of people waiting for a service from the council. This was a role that was trialled, and we've now rolled out across the council, and it's paying dividends. Of note of concern, again, which is in the papers, is around our reliance on short-term beds. There's two aspects to the use of short-term beds. For people being discharged from hospital, if you think that most people who are discharged from hospital go straight home without needing any support, but for those that can't go home immediately and end up in a short-term bed, there's two aspects that are a concern for me. First of all, if you look at the report, that the average length of stay in a short-term bed is just under 17 weeks. and that doesn't feel very short term to me. And so there's a concern from a welfare, or should I say well-being perspective, that that's not going to promote the best outcome for someone. So we should use short-term beds, but for it to be successful, it should be short-term, and it's really important that those people get the level of therapy support that they need to get them home as soon as possible. The other aspect of that is the cost of these short-term beds is far exceeding the funding that we receive. And to be frank, something's got to give. We just simply cannot continue to fund the amount of short-term beds, and that, there's action plans in place to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else want to come in? No, in that case, Karen, can I come to you, please?
Thank you. Yes, we've 3 questions on safe, healthy and living well. If I go to Councillor Baker first for the first two. Sorry.
Right. Timeliness of assessments on page 49. Whilst performance is above the national average and the statistical neighbour average, the length of time to complete such assessments has increased. Is there a reason for this, and what is being done to address this?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baker, for your question. I think, first of all, we have to get this in perspective. This quarter, when we would expect to see numbers drop, we've seen the highest numbers of contacts received at the front door, and this is obviously a concern, and you're right to pick that up. However, despite these high numbers, assessments are still above the national average and statistical neighbour. The report also highlights record numbers coming in from the police and the health services, but despite the record numbers, actual referrals are falling. So if high numbers are not translating into high referrals, then we have to look at the assessment of risk. The head of safeguarding has clear oversight of performance and has recently undertaken practice incentive training with teams to readdress the focus of this work. We're expecting to see an improvement in overall timeliness of assessments moving forward. It's not without noting that NY is above the regional and national statistics for performance. The statistics do appear to indicate something of a plateau, and I'm informed that the head of safeguarding has clear oversight of the performance. So I think we've clocked this, and it's on the radar. But let's see what happens, because it is a plateau rather than actual a rise in numbers. But we're there with it. Thank you.
My second question, child protection plans on page 50. We're aware that a child protection plan relates to children presenting to services at risk of significant harm, and we see that this is an increase in the number of these plans. And what is being done to address the underlying cause? i.e., why are we getting so many children presenting with risks of significant harm?
Yeah, thank you again, Councillor Baker. This is another excellent challenge. My own copy of the report is flagged under this heading, and you can see exclamation marks around it. So, I have picked this up as a real concern, particularly as it's driven by high numbers of the CPPs. I'm saddened to see this steep trajectory of the graph, which is at a 10-year high and ultimately a reflection of the society today and the impact it's having on our children. As to the drivers, and I think that's the important thing, isn't it? Analysis of the recently published 2025 indices of multiple deprivation highlights that we've seen a shift in the deprivation profile of North Yorkshire, with a statistically significant increase in the numbers of children living in the 30% most deprived communities, and a statistically significant decrease in the number of children living in the 20% least deprived communities. These increases in relative deprivation means that it's more like that the families will come under strain, and in some cases this could lead to children being at risk of harm. Going to what we're doing in respect of what we're doing to address this, the service has implemented a 3-month breakthrough plan to assess all aspects from initial assessment through to child in need and child protection to ensure that the thresholds are being maintained and only those children who need to be on a child protection plan remain so, with safe steps to cross over to early help. We'll meet the needs of the community wherever possible. However, we will intervene when children are being at risk of harm and significant harm. So I think we're addressing those problems. I don't know whether Pete wants to add anything to that, or I think we've probably covered it.
Yes, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, everything that Councillor Sanderson has said, I completely agree with. The breakthrough plan is important. If you see the DFE narrative, the national narrative is that nationally this is what you're experiencing in North Yorkshire is happening everywhere. I think we're really careful not to take that national narrative and make that a justification for the local position, which is why the breakthrough plan is about doing everything we can here to make sure things are as tight and secure as they can be. And that will culminate in a peer review in January, where colleagues from across the region will be asked in to validate our own judgments on that. Alongside this, the service is preparing for the Family First reforms, which will happen over the next year, and going at those in a really measured way, which takes account of where North Yorkshire is at this time.
Yes, the third question's from me. I know that the Council's Health and Adult Services was recently inspected by the CQC and achieved a good rating with an overall score of 81 out of 100. This is to be commended, and I promise I won't mention it again, and reflects all the work done by the staff over the years to support and enable the development of the service. The report does, however, include some areas of development. How is the Directorate responding to these, please?
Certainly, Karen, please feel free to keep on mentioning it. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I'll let Richard answer in more detail, but I do know that the Director is still working up a comprehensive action plan to address the areas that were highlighted, but Richard might want to say more.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question, and thank you for the point about CQC. I will also want to mention it, and we're still equal third best in England at the current stage. What I'd like to say also is I think this is a story, a success. In adult social care, they reflect issues around housing, finance, leisure, and other services too, which are really important. In terms of the areas to work on, we did have some debate with CQC about some of those findings and recommendations, but at the end of the day, it's their report and they've determined what to include. On the issues that you've highlighted, the workforce position generally, particularly within the council, is strong. We have over 95% of posts filled, and that compares really well across the sector. There are greater challenges in the wider care sector, but we have been working with them on that. Clearly, changes around immigration policy, which are very sensitive, will need some very careful handling. The report also highlighted issues around transport, which we know is a collective challenge for all of us in terms of a very rural area, and there isn't an easy answer to that. But clearly, there are new transport responsibilities being devolved to York and North Yorkshire as a patch together. And then there are issues raised about home care and housing. We've seen a real improvement in the home care position, and we continue to support and nurture that. And I think in terms of housing, we're doing some really great work with community development, not only to we recently brought to executive the proposals for the next generation of extra care, but also looking at supported housing for younger adults, which will be crucial for children coming through, but young adults with mental health and disabilities too.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, Michael's already, jokingly, I suppose, said it. Do mention it again, because I think it's important for this authority that the public out there, the 600,000 or 800,000 residents of North Yorkshire, know what we're about. And this exemplifies our whole strategy as an administration, because I'll be very blunt and simplistic, I suppose, about it. but we prioritise services to vulnerable people. I've said it before umpteen times, but it's worth saying again. And without that, political will, I suspect we wouldn't be as successful and as recognised as we are, not just in terms of financial grip, but in terms of the services that we provide, both in HAS and children's social care and the likes. It's very tough though, isn't it? Because we're never going to get political acclaim for the prioritisation that we give to those services, because quite often they're hidden. The services to people without a voice, but we should be their voice. They're a moral crusade. And you know, quite frankly, the next time I hear, and I said I was going to be blunt, the next time I hear a whining councillor or member of the public go on about us having to be not as generous as we were with things like home to school transport and conform to national guidelines in line with most other local authorities, which means that some people able to pay or able to take their children to school will have to pay or take them children to school. That gives us the ability to prioritise these services, then they'll get short shrift off me. And I make no apologies for making this statement today, but we're coming to a revenue budget and you will see, everybody will see, the dire financial consequences of not being financially sound. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Gareth. So Karen, that concludes the questions for Safe, Healthy and Living Well. Can I move us on then to maximise potential and ask any colleagues if they want to come in? Can't see anybody indicating. So Karen, can I come to you, please?
Thank you. We've just one question on maximising the potential. Councillor Baker.
Sorry, I seem to have had a lot of questions this morning. One or two have been on behalf of Councillor Brodigan, I do say. The high performance of the timeliness of the new EHC plan is encouraging. How are schools managing the resultant increase in children with a plan on the school roll and the additional time and resources that it requires to meet these assessed and documented needs?
Thank you, Councillor Baker, for your question. And you're right that the high performance and timeliness is encouraging and a positive step. Schools are adapting to the growing number of pupils with educational healthcare plans by deploying specialist staff. They're investing in training and working closely with us and external agencies. Schools are also developing ordinarily available provision to better meet diverse needs with existing budgets, but the demand often exceeds available resources and making this an increasingly significant operational challenge. But we will continue to advocate nationally for fair funding and work collaboratively with schools to ensure every child receives the support they need to thrive. And I'd just like to reiterate that we in North Yorkshire are one of the lowest funded. We are 146 out of 151 LAs for high needs funding. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Leader. Just very briefly, it's also about making the most of the money that is available. So there are flexibilities within the allocation split of the dedicated schools grant. So there will be a paper at Schools Forum this week, which seeks to move more funding into the high needs block, which would allow the money to follow the child so that where the children land, more resource goes with them. Ultimately, that will be subject to the approval of the Secretary of State.
Okay, was that it then? Sorry, Janet?
Very, very briefly, it is an interesting question because we've always been assured that if a child has an identified need, the need will be met irrespective of whether they've got an EHCP or not. And I think that's the point that Pete just made. And I think that's really, really important that when we come to this at the Schools Forum, that we actually make that point. You know, the identified need, the money should follow that identified need, irrespective of whether they've got a diagnosis or an EHCP. So I feel really, really strongly about that.
Okay, Janet, thank you. So does that conclude that section, Karen? Thank you. Can I then move us to one council, please, and ask any colleagues if they have anything to add? If not, then Karen, I come to you.
Thank you. Yes, we have just one question on one council, Councillor Andrew Williams.
Private sector companies and investors go into this in respect to telephone call isolation page 87. I'm looking around the table to see Heather, please.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a slight sense of deja vu with this question because I have been asked it before, and the answer remains the same, that we're not able to find that kind of data through other authorities and other government organisations, because the 4-minute target was set by one of the scrutiny committees when we started this new council performance report. So it's a little difficult to compare because it's apples and pears at the moment. But I must admit that it is a very good performance increase, and maybe reflects that because more people are using our website. I mean, we've had over 4 million total page views on the website. Therefore, it is easier to improve your telephone performance. But it does show that the team are working very hard and are being very successful with the transformation.
Thank you, Heather. Was that the only question then, Karen? Okay. Okay. There is a supplemental report here on housing. Simon, I don't know if you'd like to say anything about that.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So why is this here? Why do you have this in your quarterly outturn report? It's because, as part of our commitment to improving our housing landlord services, we consider it very important that the council as a whole and the executive in particular are invested in the facts and figures surrounding our journey as a social landlord. Members know that having brought 3 stockholding authorities together, we self-reported to the regulator but not least because we didn't have any data. And data is the key to managing our housing stock, our HRA, responsibly and being responsive to our tenants. And so it's very important that myself and Nick have regularly focused on this, and he is every day, but that we see what progress is being made in terms of the data we hold, and then holding ourselves to targets to make improvements. So that's why it's here, Leader. It's so that everybody knows we're transparent about where we're making progress, what challenges we still have. One of the ones that jumps out at me is complaints. I was in a meeting with the regulator yesterday evening, actually, and it's a common in C3, and we're very determined to make this right. I have to say, I had a meeting with the tenant scrutiny panel in Selby a few weeks ago. This was one of the things they raised, and they will raise in their report, which will go to our own scrutiny committee. So it's very important that everybody knows exactly what we're up to, and we are putting time and resources into this. And more generally, of course, I have not shied away from it. One of the issues that we face is the issue of voids, disproportionately in the former Selby district. And I said at full council in my report to full council and in answer to a letter from Keir Mather MP about the additional resources we are putting in to tackling this. It isn't simply an inherited problem. It's a problem with old stock and taking the opportunity to sort of switch off because I talk too much. Yeah. Taking the opportunity as part of our decarbonisation programme, the £40 million we're spending on bringing 1,600 of the worst performing council homes up to a decent standard so that our tenants can afford to stay warm and dry in winter. But that has meant a backlog. And so if I could touch on the aspect of the HRA that is here in the financial reports, I'd like to make 2 points. One of them is that this has a knock-on effect to us. So our income is £1.4 million down because of void properties. So for all reasons, both our obligation to those who need housing in North Yorkshire and in terms of income and the sustainability of the housing revenue account, it's important we turn these voids round. And the second point I'd make about the HRA financial position is this: you will see that there is an overspend certain aspects, and I think it's really important that the colleagues and members of the council and the wider public understand really two things about this. It was highlighted to me in a question to me at full council, which I struggled to understand, thought I'd understood, and plainly didn't, that some members and members of the public don't understand the housing revenue account sits separate from the general fund. Because the suggestion that was made to me in this question was that the council taxpayer subsidises council housing. They don't. It has nothing to do with council tax at all. The people who pay for all this, the people who pay for the improvements of the property, the people who pay for the 500 new council homes we're going to deliver and are delivering, are council tenants. It doesn't come from the general fund or from council tax. So it's very important people understand that. And then to understand that the way that we approach the housing revenue account, which is the right way, is to see repairs and renewals as being something that has a budget over 30 years. So if you look at this year, you may see an overspend, but that's money that has to be spent now. It's money that we have to spend to be compliant with the regulations that there are, for example, on gas certificates and stock surveys where we didn't have any. We're having to do that work at pace and it's cost more money. But if we look at it over the 30 years and a budget of, think of £260 million over the next 30 years in repairs and renewals and improvements to our housing stock, that's how we see it. So although it reports as being an overspend, in the scale of things it isn't. It's necessary work. Where you go wrong in running a housing revenue account is if you anyway, it's probably enough from me on that. And Barry, you do have a button, don't you? Yeah. But no, it's forgive me, leader. It's just an opportunity to clarify a few things about how the housing revenue account operates and what seems to be a misconception about who funds it. It is not funded out of council tax.
Thank you, Simon. I think that's been a helpful supplemental paper, and also your opportunity to give us that advice. Does anybody have any comments to make before we wrap up this section? No, in which case, I mean, we note again the strong performance of the council, but more importantly, in my mind, where there are areas of improvement identified, they have been identified, and we are taking steps to address them. So can I thank you for your contributions on that? I'm now going to turn to the revenue account, and Gareth, can I come to you to introduce it, please?
Yeah, thank you. I will be fairly brief. I mean, the headline figure shows us projecting an £8 million overspend, or just short of £8 million overspend. That's about 1.2% of the total budget, to give it some context. The big, I wouldn't say a disappointment so much, well, it is a disappointment, frankly, is the CHIPS budget that's coming in at a projection of about £15 million worth of overspending come year end. I think we do well as well to remember we've also, in addition to that, put £12 million worth of growth into that budget base at the beginning of the year. £8 million of that overspend has come from child placement. I will refer to Janet in a moment. Perhaps she knows that I was going to ask her to speak to that full budget head. Health and Adult Services, a small overspend there of £2.5 million. Again, they've had growth in previous years. Community Development, a slightly better tale, if you want to put it like that, of a £3.4 million underspend. I'm not sure that will be sustainable going forward without service change, but that will come for challenge through the process. And the Environment Directorate is showing a worsening position this time of a £1.1 million overspend, largely due to a falling car parking charge income. Central Services, we have released, it's worth noting, Resources and Central Services, I should say, we have released £5 million worth of a pay and inflation reserve, as national pay awards come in lower than expected and inflation was not as high as expected. So that gives us some offset, and again showing a £3.4 million underspend. We'll bake that in next year to the next year's budget going forward, where we safely. Finally, you'll see on the recommendations that there's a request for a further 549k to our customer engagement platform. After Janet spoke, perhaps Gary will give us the detail of that. It's more of a process thing than anything else.
Thank you, Leader. As Gareth's already highlighted, this quarter reports a really concerning set of figures for children and families. It's an issue we have on our radar, and it's regularly reported on, aired and challenged at our CYP exec meetings. The figures are mainly around the higher than anticipated numbers of looked after children, which have been steadily rising for quite some time now, and demands around associated child placements and really the increasing complexity of these placements. The numbers coming into care are greater than the numbers leaving care, and this is putting a huge pressure on our foster care capacity. As I've said many times before, we will always seek to place North Yorkshire children with North Yorkshire carers. But as we see the care system constantly at or near full capacity, which we see every quarter coming through on those Q reports coming into the foster service, children are presenting with increased complexities, and we've had to look at some external placements. You know, when I first came into this position, we had, I think, 3 external placements, and this rose to about 9, and it's fluctuated. So there are a small number also of very, very expensive placements that started to emerge in 2025, and they've grown this year. So to give you an idea about the pressure here, some of these placements are in excess of £1 million per child per year. These placements are due to multiple complexities and vulnerabilities which require high staffing ratios in order to keep the young person and the staff looking after that young person safe. And that ratio can be as high as 5 to 1 in some cases. 5 members of staff looking after one child 24/7. We are a demand-led service, so once a child has been assessed as needing to come into care, we have to make a timely and appropriate placement. But the market is not working efficiently and demand outstrips supply. External companies are pricing in the risk of taking in some of these complex children. This is a national issue, and so often a variety of local authorities are actually all competing and chasing a few available places. Of course, we have management plan action to address these pressures. We challenge providers. We are building in more places and looking to recruit more foster carers, but it's not easy. For a number of years, we have been changing our practice model. We're looking towards placing children with friends and family first, and we know that this has better long-term outcomes for our children. This is also supported in the Family First partnership reforms, and we are already moving towards this position. But these are medium-term actions, and we will not see a quick fix from what we're doing here. Some more immediate actions underway are around practice demand management, aimed at safely mitigating risk. We are working with partners to review and refine assessment of risk and an early help offer at the front door. We want to ensure families receive the right support at the right time. This approach is designed to strengthen safeguarding by intervening earlier and more effectively, so we reduce the need for statutory interventions where appropriate and where it's safe to do so. We think this will reduce the number of children being brought into care. Finally, it's something of an understatement to say that we welcome government reform of service funding and the care system as identified in the Josh McAllister review. We can't see that happen early enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And Gary, would you like to speak to this recommendation about using the LGR reserve?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the request is actually for £1.36 million from the LGR reserve. That's the gross cost that's been asked for to fund over the next 3 years. This is for the replacement of telephony and the CRM, the customer relationship management database. So 2 pieces of technology. When the council came together, there was clearly 8 councils, 6 CRMs, multiple telephony platforms, and 2 councils who didn't even have a CRM. So this is an attempt to bring together our customer technology in one place, and this will be a new platform that's put in place which provides great opportunities to deliver savings. There is actually a budget already in place of £830,000 to pay for this over the years, so it will eventually pay back in its own right. That will probably take something like 8 years, hence the request for this one-off funding in the interim. But eventually it will pay back for itself, and that's before it's then used to exploit the opportunities that it'll bring as part of the transformation strategy and the customer strategy, the customer programme in particular. So this will provide greater visibility on customer contacts across all services. It will allow us to introduce elements of automation and the use of AI to analyse data, and we will be using that in order to improve the customer journey and to reduce waste and to make savings. So hopefully this is a very virtuous thing whereby we can save money and improve the experience of our customers. So the request is there for £1.36 million, and as I say, I expect savings will come back on this in the future as we move forward on our broader customer savings programme.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody got anything else they want to comment on the revenue budget, please? No. So Gareth, you just want to formally move the two recommendations, please?
Yeah, just formally move the recommendations.
Okay, one's to note and the other one's to approve that 1.36. Are we happy with that? Seeing nods around the table. Okay, can we move on then, please, to Treasury Management? Again, I'll come to you, Gareth.
Thank you, Will. So I've nothing much to add. It's a statement of fact, but as ever, I'm pleased to highlight our excellent treasury management team that seem to outperform against benchmark with our cash reserves and interest earned.
Okay, anybody got any questions or comments on Treasury Management? Do you want to formally move those recommendations?
Formally move.
And I think we should also note our thanks to the Audit Committee for the work that they do in going through this on our behalf. So again, I'm looking for nods around the table for this, noting and referring. Okay, and then the final part, Gareth, is the capital plan.
Yeah, again, a statement of fact as it is. At the moment, there is one recommendation there. I think it's formally written down. I didn't check. I just assumed it was. We did agree £2 million allocation should it be needed for the Selby scheme. I don't think that the reserve pot from which we were taking it from was identified, but we want to formally identify it as strategic capacity. I don't know whether Gary wants to add anything to that.
Okay, anybody got anything on capital plan? We are going to take a vote on the moving of that £2 million from one budget to another. So would you formally move?
Formally move.
Okay, so in that case, can we have a show of hands, please, for little a and little b? Thank you. That is unanimous. Right, so that completes quarterly outturn. Can I now turn us to agenda item 6, which is the Harrogate Transforming City Funds. And Malcolm, can I come to you, please, to introduce it?
Yes, thank you, Leader. And Harrogate Transforming Cities Fund is a project to provide and deliver much needed investment in the public realm in one of our, indeed our largest town in the county, in Harrogate. I have to say it's incredibly disappointing and frustrating with the delays that we have had to date, which go back and predate my tenure in this position. Particularly in the context of what we've delivered at the Skipton TCF, which is coming to completion and has been really well received in Skipton, and the work that's about to commence, and again, is being well received in Selby. I do have to say that on Friday we received a letter from Waltons on behalf of the claimant, suggesting that the making of the 5th TRO was premature. Given there is an appeal, well, it was premature because there's an appeal before the High Court on TROs 1 to 4. From a legal perspective, the advice remains unchanged in that we are entitled to rely on the decision of the High Court, and although permission to appeal has been granted, that is not an indicator that the appeal will ultimately. Carl, do you wish to say anything else?
Just really supposed to highlight this is I suppose a milestone day for this scheme today, in that it's been a long time in gestation. It's one of 3 transforming cities projects that are on the books. This one has been subject to very extensive consultation, been subject to amendment following comments that have been received to the scheme. And I think we're now at the point where we're keen to progress to enter into that contract arrangement with NY Highways to deliver the scheme, subject to the combined authority releasing the funding on the back of the business case, which has previously been supported. The report sets out quite a bit of detail around the history of the scheme itself and the nature of it. What I would highlight as well is that this is probably one of the most significant investments that's been made in Harrogate in recent times as part of the TCF programme. It seeks to refresh the public realm in the centre of the scheme, provide a much better gateway from the station into the town centre, and help support more active modes of travel. So there are improvements in here for cyclists, pedestrians, but also much better access to the bus station, and indeed improved traffic flow and journey times through a complementary mover scheme, which is looking to be introduced as part of the scheme. So it's a good quality scheme. It's been subject to significant consultation, in fact 3 consultation exercises. We have a scheme which is affordable, and that is partly due to the fact that we're looking to use our own company, NY Highways, to deliver the scheme in the same way that they've successfully delivered the scheme in Skipton thus far. And I think Cabinet member has already highlighted the fact that we do have a legal opinion on the basis of the TRO decisions we have been considered lawful by the High Court and the appeal, and remain lawful unless a challenge is successful. So we legally are able to proceed on the basis and rely on those decisions to support application before us. And the last thing I would just say is that the traffic regulation orders being in place are not a prerequisite of the combined authority funding decision, which is due to be made on the 4th of December. So hopefully that decision will also flow from this one and allow us to make progress and deliver the scheme. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Carl. Katrina, as our lawyer closely connected to this scheme, is there anything that you would like to add to what has been said so far?
Thank you, Chairman. Most of it has actually been covered, but obviously it is important to bring to members' attention that there has been a granting of the appeal to the Court of Appeal in relation to those first TROs that we made in connection with the scheme. They're granted on the basis that there is a real prospect of success of an appeal, but it must be said that that's not to be taken as an indication that they will be successful. And as at the current time, it is perfectly legitimate for the council to rely on the High Court decision, which was made wholly in the council's favour, and to carry on really with your decision making as at today.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. Can I open it up to any discussion around the table? Michael, please.
Thank you. Means that the wider public generally doesn't know what we're trying to deliver with this investment. I still hear people complain to me about Station Parade going down to 1 lane, and they are flabbergasted when I tell them that the scheme doesn't involve that at all. I specifically want to highlight the A61 signalling upgrades, which will combine with the wider scheme improvements to improve the flow of traffic through Harrogate Town Centre, alongside the improvements, particularly for pedestrians. This should improve the traffic lights from the Royal Hall right through to beyond the bus and rail station, and I think that element of the wider scheme should be welcomed. I also want to make the point that the scheme being delivered here has cross-party support locally, because I think this also sometimes gets lost in the coverage. A members' working group chaired by Liberal Democrats made some really valuable suggestions and amendments and these have been incorporated into the plans that we're seeking to deliver. And I'm grateful for this cross-party support. So I'm happy to support moving this scheme forward to the next stage.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else? Simon, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. We live in a country where our inability to deliver major infrastructure projects seems to challenge economic growth, housing delivery, and all the rest of it. And the ability of a few people who don't like something to throw every possible stone in the wheels is absolutely staggering. Here's a project that's been developed over time that has the support of the people who are elected by the residents of Harrogate to deliver for them. And if we didn't make this decision today, there's every chance it would simply hit the buffers and the residents of Harrogate would lose out on £12 million worth of investment. So I'm delighted to support it. I hope the Court of Appeal agrees with the High Court and that substantial costs will be awarded against those who are standing in the way of this.
Thank you, Simon. Anybody else? Heather, please.
Thank you, Leader. I remember our meeting at Skipton being a very positive one, where we were able to show people that we were committed to a local area by helping bring forward projects that supported not just making the town centres somewhere it's nicer to go to. So I can't fathom how people can possibly go against a project which will improve Harrogate. I've driven around Harrogate a few times and it does need work, and I can wholly support junction changes that will make that happen. It's a shame when there's a few people can frustrate a project that will help so many more, because I think we owe it to the vast majority of people who do in fact support such projects and investment which will improve Harrogate. And maybe just we need to get on with it, and I'm confident that if a judge has said we're on the right track, then we should keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Anybody else want to come in? No? In which case, Malcolm, can I come to you then to move a recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I move the recommendation as listed on the agenda papers.
Okay, I think as it is quite a major decision, I'm going to ask you to read it out, and then we'll have a formal seconder, and then we'll put it to a show of hands. Thank you, Malcolm.
Yes, certainly. The recommendation is it is recommended that members approve the Assistant Chief Executive, Legal and Democratic Services, and the Executive Member for Highways and Transportation, and the Executive Member for Finance, to accept full grants from WICA and YNYCA, subject to funding body approval, to proceed and acceptable terms and conditions of grant being received. Do you want me to do the caveats? Yeah, this is subject to agree the final terms of and enter into the construction contract to deliver the Harrogate TCF project with North Yorkshire Highways, delegate authority to enact the project scope adjustments, if necessary, post-contract entry to maintain costs within budget or to seek additional funding, and to delegate authority to procure and appoint NEC4 project manager and supervisor and professional services necessary for contract management and delivery of the Harrogate TCF project.
Okay, thank you. Is that I'm going to ask for a show of hands, those in favour. Okay, I believe that is unanimous. So thank you for that. And can we now move on to the next item, which is the annual review of member champions. And I don't think this is going to take as long as the previous item, especially when we have champions present in the room. I'd just like to say that I value the role of the champions, those that are receiving a special responsibility allowance and those that don't. I don't propose that we make any changes, that we just thank them for their work and that we continue as we are. But would anybody like to speak to that, especially the champions? You don't have to. Okay, so the recommendation is just to note the report and consider whether the roles remain appropriate, and I believe that they do. So I'm looking for nods around the table, so thank you for that. And then we'll come to almost the final item, the forward plan. Heather, anything for you to say, other than we're going to be very busy just before Christmas?
Yes, we'll be remarkably busy the week before Christmas. So I can imagine that maybe one or two items might not actually make it to the agenda, but yes, lots and lots to do.
Okay, so the forward plan is just for noting. Then the final item is any other items of urgency. I have not been notified of any. So with that, can I thank you for your attendance this morning and your contributions, and I will close the meeting. Thank you.